Welcome aboard, everybody. It's 9 o'clock. It's Friday morning. And while I know these are huge shoes to fill, Lenny went to get his blood work done today. So he didn't have the appropriate amount of time to spend doing his notes and studying for the show, but I did. So here we are. And of course, we're going to talk about a couple of free agent signings. We're going to talk about some team needs going, since the winter meetings are now over. We still have teams that need to address their needs. We have free agents available. And then we're going to finish off with some Trevor Bauer updates, which you might want to get the youngest members of Lenny's Legion crew you might not find it appropriate. It is adult content. I'm not going to go into detail or anything, but we do like to protect our children around here and our youngest members of Lenny Legion. And so if you have your kids around, that might be a time to turn off. That's coming at the end. But let's get started. I know everybody's interested in talking about Brandon Nimmo and the Mets situation. We're going to talk about salary caps a little bit, especially when it comes to the Mets, because boy, it just seems like they don't even care. It's astonishing how high over the tax threshold this team is willing to go. And is there a point where the commissioner has to say, obviously you don't care that you're going to be paying $40 million extra in taxes this year because you get penalized. There's 3 brackets that you can fall into once you go over the tax threshold with Major League Baseball, but there is no limit. I mean, you reach the 3rd threshold. What's to stop you from continuing to sign players if you have the money? Because it only goes up so high. And, just like we talk about, there should be a salary minimum for teams like Pittsburgh and some of these teams that aren't spending any money ever, like Oakland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore might be spending some more money this year. But the normal teams that don't spend enough money, how are you going to put together a winning team? So I wonder at what point the commissioner will step in and say, okay, Mets, you can't continue to spend. They've topped $300 million at this point, but they did sign Brandon Nimmo. He's not a great fantasy guy, but he is a good baseball player, and he fits in great at the top of the Mets lineup. So they choose to re-sign him. They agreed to a deal that would bring him back to the Mets. He's going to make $162 million over 8 years with a salary of $20 million each season. He will have a no-trade clause, and, of course, he's represented by Scott Boras. He's 30 this March. So, look, I mean, he was, if you're looking at it from a team standpoint, not a fantasy standpoint, he was the clear number 2 outfielder on this winter's free agent market. He's clearly well behind Aaron Judge, but he's also well above any of these other outfielders that were available. A lot of it has to do with his defense, his ability to get on base. They stretched the deal to 8 years. That means he's going to be 37. It will take him through age 37. He's still, it is, to me, it's surprising to see how long these deals are with these players when time and time again, it's proven over and over that there is a such thing as age decline, and it happens rapidly. And when some players, they last longer than other players, but when you sign a guy for 8 years and he's already 30, it makes you wonder. I mean, you would say to yourself, kind of like with the Padres. Malpal made a great point in the chat room yesterday. He gave his opinion on what the Padres are doing. And, of course, he lives in San Diego, and he's been following the Padres for as long as anybody in this chat room has. And his point of view is that they signed this long-term contract with Xander Bogaerts. But after 2024, the only 2 contracts that they have on their books so far include Fernando Tatis and now Xander Bogaerts. Juan Soto is free after 2024, and even Manny Machado is free after 2023. He can opt out. So Malpal's position is that, they know that they have what they have for only a short period of time. Why not go and find the best players possible to try and win before they lose all of these players? I mean, Manny Machado going is a big deal. Right now, their infield is unstoppable. Of course, if you ask Malpal, he would love to get rid of Trent Grisham. He's not a huge fan of Trent Grisham, but you know what? If you have one straggler and you're surrounded by a bunch of all-stars, then it's not that bad. Anyway, despite the lack of power, Brandon Nimmo stood out from the rest of the outfielders on the market. I told you one of the reasons is because his ability to play center field defensively is absolutely important to these teams. And he has a 13% walk rate, which if you follow walk rates in baseball, you know that most of them fall below 10% or right around 10%. And 13% is a great walk rate. And because of that, he has a 385 on base percentage. Only 17 qualified hitters have a better walk rate in that time, while only 7 have a better on-base percentage. So he clearly excels getting on base. His career batting line is 269 average, 385 OBP, and that, of course, leads to a 134 weighted runs created plus, which means the average baseball player has a weighted runs created plus of 100. You think about a 134, that's above and beyond the average hitter in baseball. So the Mets also have a long history with Brandon Nimmo. They drafted him 13th overall in 2011, so he's been with this team that long. And even before this offseason began, it was reported that the Mets were really prioritizing keeping Brandon Nimmo and their closer Edwin Diaz, and now they've done both. So, of course, there's risks here. I mean, Brandon Nimmo has not been the epitome of health, all of these years. He's landed on the injured list because of hamstring strains. He had a collapsed lung at one point, a neck issue, a bruised finger, and it's just a bunch of various ailments. He's only played more than 100 games in a season twice. And you think about it, there's 162 games in a season. So if you're not eclipsing 100 games more than twice since 2011, I would say that qualifies as quite a risk, a health risk here. But most of those injuries happened several years ago, and he has been able to stay healthy at least since 2020 in the shortened season. He was healthy. Then in 2021, he played 92 games and then 151 games this year. That's a huge jump. And maybe he's put his health stuff behind him. As players get older and they mature mentally and they learn how to avoid accidents. Like Bryce Harper, yes, I know he spent a good chunk of the year injured, but when he first started out, this guy, let's talk about Byron Buxton. He's another one that I'm hoping will eventually grow out of this idea that you have to run full speed right into a wall before you stop. Even little kittens and dogs, if you throw something and they chase it on a hardwood floor, they figure out quickly when to put the brakes on because they know they're about to slide further than when they stop. When they're kittens, they'll just keep running and they hit the wall really hard. But you know what I mean? Like they learn to put the brakes on a little earlier as they get older. Hopefully Brandon Nimmo falls into this category. Another free agent signing for the Mets. They decided to go ahead and sign the relief pitcher David Robertson. 1 year, $10 million. There's no options or incentives. This guy represents himself, which I absolutely love, but he's already passed the physical, so this is a definite add with the Mets. A thing to remember here is that he's going to be 38 in April, but he does have a good long record of success at the major league level as a reliever. In fact, he was one of the first effectors in baseball when I think it was Francona that was using him. Yeah.
How much you spend on him as a closer?
How much are you going to spend on David Robertson as a closer? And by the way, Lenny is here. He's already gone and done his blood test, and he's back, and he's in the chat room. So hopefully you guys enjoy his company today in there without any distraction, and that's really nice for everybody. So David Robertson, how much are you going to pay for him? What do you expect from him in the coming seasons? Let me tell you a little bit about his stats. In 9 straight seasons from 2010 to 2018, he threw at least 60 innings as a reliever, and he never posted an ERA higher than 3.82. His control hasn't always been perfect, whose has, but he never had a strikeout rate lower than 26% in any of those seasons, and this year's league average for relief pitchers was 23.6%. So he clearly, even at the age of 38, he still strikes out batters at a higher percentage than the average reliever. Unfortunately, what we just discussed was 2010 to 2018. Now, we talk about 2019. That reliability came to an abrupt halt. He actually, right after he signed a deal, a $23 million deal for 2 years with the Phillies, he only made 7 appearances due to injuries and eventually needed Tommy John surgery. That kept him out of action for most of that year and all of 2020, and he returned to the mound in 21. So he made 12 appearances for the Rays in 2021. What did he do in 2022? I don't happen to have that in front of me. But anyway, back to the Mets salary here. They have a payroll going into next season, $322 million, according to Roster Resource. In terms of the competitive balance tax, they are at $335 million, and that means they are incredibly more than $100 million beyond the lowest threshold of the competitive balance tax of $233 million. There are 3 further tiers of luxury tax payments after that first one, going up to in $20 million increments to finish at $293 million, with the Mets now more than $40 million above the top tier of tax punishments. So, unbelievable. I find it very intriguing. We've never had a team willing to spend this much money and have this high of a payroll. And so it was almost like teams just knew. Even the Dodgers, when they eclipsed the tax threshold, it was like by 20 million or something. And it was still very costly for them to do that. And you figure at each tier threshold, they have to pay $20 million more in taxes at each step of the way. And the Mets are completely over that and in the sky at this point. So the winter meetings, they wrapped up. And among the things that the Dodgers didn't do is get a closer. Of course, it is interesting to say, well, okay, let's start the Dodger talk, the closer talk with the Dodgers at Craig Kimbrell. Last year, Craig Kimbrell did not even make it into a postseason game. That's how little faith this management had for Kimbrell to get the job done. Now, okay, albeit they have a great bullpen with the Dodgers have a deep pitching roster, so they have a lot of options to go to. But of course, nobody that's a Dodgers fan thinks that the team should use closer by committee next year. But Andrew Friedman, he says, I don't think it's something that we absolutely have to have. He says he doesn't think that they absolutely need a closer, and basically saying that he's fine with not having a closer. They don't plan on finding one at this point. But Dodgers analyst Jerry Harrison Jr., who unless he has the same name, he used to be a baseball player, says the team needs to name a closer before opening day because everybody feels more comfortable. So if you're putting feelings over stats, if you're putting your feelings, everybody feels more comfortable knowing that so-and-so is their closer, or especially the guy that's named as the closer feels more comfortable. But is that really what you're trying to accomplish here with your pitchers? Think of it. when you see teams doing closer by committee, it sucks for fantasy owners, but it causes an environment of competition where you have these relievers, all of them want to be the closer. So maybe, just maybe, it does incentivize a little hard work ethic, a little more competition between the relievers to get the job. When you just hand it over to one guy and you say, no matter how bad or good you do, it's your job, what do the other guys in the relief corps have to work for to get that job? They have Brewster Gratterall, Daniel Hudson, Shelby Miller, Caleb Ferguson, Victor Gonzalez, Evan Phillips. They have a lot of kind of just unknown. There's a lot of yet unknown pitchers in this bullpen that they could end up using as a closer, but I'm still not convinced that they're not going to try to get one. Craig Kimbrell, he came over from the White Sox. He had a 3.75 ERA on the year, which is still, is that terrible? It's not the worst thing. I mean, ask the Phillies about bad bullpens, and you can find out that 3.75 is bad, but is it bad enough to not be allowed to pitch in the postseason? But because we know that he did lose his spot on the postseason roster, or they didn't call him into any games, even if he was on the roster in the postseason. That clearly shows that the management doesn't have faith in this guy. But in all fairness, his ERA improved to 3.10 in the second half, even though his FIP was 4.60 and his strikeout rate cratered to 20.7%. So are the Dodgers going to go after Carlos Correa? I think this is more of an opinion than anything, but of course the media, they say, there's still scars from 2017 and the Dodgers don't want to sign Correa because he was part of the Houston Astros cheating scandal and blah, blah, blah. That's an opinion, and my idea, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like the Dodgers sure are. When it comes to this kind of thing, I just don't believe that they're going to hold it against him from 2017. They're going to say, well, we don't want this guy on our team because he was caught cheating. I think the most important, this is just my opinion, but I think the most important variable is that it's been 5 years since 2017. What has Carlos Correa done since that cheating scandal? Clearly, he's not cheating anymore. So has he been able to live up to the hype of what he was when he was cheating? I mean, isn't that the most important thing the Dodgers should be paying attention to right now? We'll see what happens, but hold on a second. 1 second. I lost where I'm at in my notes. Because what would be a podcast if you didn't lose where you're at in your notes? Give me 1 second. I got to scroll all the way back up here. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Carlos Rodon next, but also the Padres. So as far as Correa is concerned, the media wants to tell you that they don't want him because he cheated, whatever. I don't think that's true. He's, last year he signed, when he was a free agent, he signed a 3-year deal with Minnesota and with the option to opt out. So he could just take another shot at the free agent market this year, which is what he's doing. And there's a lot of teams out there that need to add a shortstop or are still looking to add a shortstop. The Twins, of course, they love Correa as a person and a player, and they will stretch as far as that they can go, but they're a mid-market team, and we know how that works. It's hard to fend off teams like Giants who still have like $360 million to spend, and it's hard for the Twins to compete with that. So we kind of just automatically rule that out. But the Padres are another interesting. They have they just spent $280 million on Xander Bogaerts. Because they spent $280 million on Xander Bogaerts, you have to imagine that Carlos Correa is going to go for $300 million. And that, of course, is going to lower the Twins' confidence that they can keep Correa. Giants ownership is very involved. This is following a steep attendance drop last year and seems intent on filling multiple holes. So They say Carlos Correa holds a lot of leverage in free agency. I would say that Dansby Swanson is just as good, if not better, than Carlos Correa. That's my personal opinion. So we'll see, but don't forget Dansby Swanson is still out there, and he is absolutely every bit as good as Correa, in my opinion. The Cubs are also looking at both Correa and Swanson. Of course, according to this writer, Swanson seems like the more obvious fit for them because Swanson's fiance is a star of the Chicago Red Star Soccer Club, and he will also be cheaper than Correa. So that's an interesting tidbit. His girlfriend actually plays soccer in Chicago as her profession, so it would make sense for Dansby Swanson to go there or choose to go there if he has the option to choose. The Red Sox, they offered $28 million a year for Bogaerts for 6 years, and maybe a little higher. We don't really know, but they really weren't even in striking distance of the Padres. So another example. I mean, Xander Bogaerts really is setting the stage for how much are Dansby Swanson and Carlos Correa going to go for. Now, Red Sox, are they interested in Carlos Correa? It shouldn't be ruled out. There's no clear indication that they've actually reached out to Carlos Correa, but manager Alex Cora does have a past with Correa. He likes Correa. They had time together in Houston, of course, during the cheating scandal. I don't think they'd have a problem getting the cheating scandal man in Boston since they took Alex Cora back, right? Anyway, the Dodgers still could use a shortstop, but they don't see Correa a fit due to his presence on the 2017 Astro. Bull Dinky and Poppycock, in my opinion. Okay? I just think these writers nowadays...
Don't steal my line!
Why do they put so much opinion in? Why don't they just state the facts, what they know? I mean, I just have gotten to the point where I have so little trust in these unnamed sources and these expert insiders. When they don't have a name attached to it, I don't believe it, not for a second, especially when it's not a fact. It's just an opinion of somebody. I mean, who's to say it's not the opinion of the guy writing the article? As per source insiders, it's like, no, this is really your opinion, and you're just trying to make it sound legit by saying some insider said it, but nobody ever puts their name to it. How can you believe it? That's just me, but let's talk about Carlos Rodon. How's the chat room, Leonard? Is anybody talking?
Everybody's doing great.
Okay, are you paying attention?
I'm paying attention.
Did anybody say how much they would pay for Robertson?
I haven't paid attention to that, okay? But I know you were talking about the Dodgers. What about, okay, you said you were going to talk about the Padres.
I am. I still have stuff for the Padres. We want Rodon to go to the Padres.
Okay, go ahead, go.
So of course, when you look at the highlights of the media papers, you could all see that the Yankees, they list all these reasons why Rodon is the perfect target for the Yankees. They say that the Yankees are targeting Rodon. Of course, they just signed Aaron Judge. And here's all the reasons why this media vultures want you to believe that Rodon is going to the Yankees. They understand that they still need to close the gap with the Astros. They desire to please Judge, who's told them he'd love to see some improvements. I mean, I'll just keep telling you the talking points of the article that is telling you all the reasons why the Yankees should get Rodon. Because they desire to please Judge. That's why. Do they desire to please Garrett Cole or their fans? No, they wanted to please Judge, who'd love to see improvements, just like any other ball player on any other club who didn't win the World Series. They'd love another star for the rotation, and they also could use a lefty. Now, that's a reasonable reason. According to USA Today Sports, the Yankees believe that the Miami native Carlos Rodon desires to be in New York, or at least on the East Coast, even though he just played on the West Coast and had no problem doing it. They believe that they relish Rodon's tough guy reputation, as they don't mind adding a little more edge to the clubhouse because they signed Josh Donaldson. And they figure that Judge, who's set to become the captain, can control these bad boy types as the leader of the clubhouse. So I would say I'm rooting for the Padres to go all in and grab Rodon while they still can, because he's clearly the best left available. Although I'm looking through the current free agents that are left, and I'm finding guys like Chris Bassett, who is an absolute underrated pitcher in my opinion, and could be just as useful as Rodon, especially, Bassett is a little older, but he's been healthy for at least the past 3 seasons. While Rodon, he's had some very iffy health, okay? That's he never pitched a full season until just a couple years ago when he pitched for the White Sox and blew them away, but they didn't sign him again. So, of course, he did good, and I think that he would pitch great in San Diego. San Diego is a pitcher's ballpark, just like San Francisco, even if it's not so much as it used to be. Rodon is only 30. The Yankees would like to keep him to a 4 or 5 year contract max. That's going to be an interesting goal in a market where 3 stars now have contracts that take them to 40 years old. He was healthy and terrific in 2022, but he does have an injury history like we just talked about. The Yankees saw his medical records at the trade deadline before the Giants decided to go for it and hold on to him, so they're obviously comfortable even if there is imperfection. The Giants, again, they have plenty of money over here, $360 million that they offered to Aaron Judge. And they might have been even willing to add a year to take them to $390 million or so. But of course, the Judge and the Yankees, they're a match made in heaven. That's where he is. That's where he's comfortable, and that's where he came up. Trey Turner took $42 million less to go to Philly than what the Padres were willing to go. Xander Bogaerts, who was thought to prefer to stay in Boston before the Padres blew them out with $280 million bid. The Georgia native Dansby Swanson, and of course Judge. So, we also have the Dodgers, the Rangers, the Mets, the Twins, and the Orioles. Also, the Blue Jays are among others who've expressed interest in Rodon. The Dodgers seem to want to go short with most. The Rangers already added Jacob deGrom. The Mets, they just signed Brandon Nimmo, and they're also... Did they sign? No, they haven't. Cody Senga is not signed yet, right? Right. We have some stuff to say about Cody Senga. But the Twins clearly trying to keep Carlos Correa. And Rodon, is he too rich for the Orioles? We don't know that. The Orioles are another team that could absolutely use Rodon's services as a veteran, as an experienced pitcher. They have a lot of youth on this team, but they are up and coming. And I think they're really ready to prove to their fans that they feel the need to win, especially looking over the pond at the Red Sox, okay, at what they're doing. I mean, honestly, the Baltimore Orioles have an opportunity to add a couple veteran arms, a couple, just a couple things I think would push them over the top here. The current opening day payroll, the Mets, of course, topped now $300 million. The Yankees are at $261 million. The Phillies now are high up there, number 3 in baseball, $241 million. The Braves, $225 million. I think it was Chris from Cambridge. I'm not sure who it was in the chat room, but brought to my attention that the Atlanta Braves don't spend a lot of money. But they're going into 2023 with the 4th highest payroll committed. So that tells me they are willing to spend some money, even if it's on just a few key players. But Dansby Swanson is an all-star on that team. He is the perfect fit in Atlanta, and in my opinion, he should stay. But for those teams out there looking for a shortstop, Dansby Swanson is an underrated and excellent addition. Now, the Padres are the first team in Major League Baseball history to have... Is Malpal here? Leonard?
I don't know. Is he here? Yes, he is.
I asked Leonard to keep an eye on the chat room, and he's not doing good about it. He's not doing good. Eddie Heckman is back from his trip, so welcome back, Eddie Heckman. We love having you back. George, good morning. So nice to see George popping in. Even if you can't make it to the live shows, I know we see you pop up in chat to give updates. We really love having you, so thanks for coming back, George. I was starting to think I chased off you. But Brooksy's here. Love it. Brooke Santanillo, the Cubby fan from Greg. All right, everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. Let's keep moving on. The Padres are now the first team in MLB history to have 3 players making at least $300 million, and they're all infielders: Bogarts, Tatis, and Machado. The first team in Major League Baseball history to have 3 $300 million players, much less all infielders. So I understand why. Is Boston Paul here? Yesterday he said F the Padres infield. Now you got to know why, because they clearly have the best infield in baseball. Now, Cole Hamels, who's 38 years old, he says he wants to pitch next year. His agent came out and said that. He hasn't pitched since 2020. Who knows if he'll be any good, but at one point in his heyday, Cole Hamels was very good, so keep an eye on that. Wilson Contreras, we have some stuff about Wilson Contreras here. He played 734 games with the Cubbies. No player has even 500-plus career games with each of the Cubs and the Cardinals. Are you adding stuff to the notes?
No, I'm just...
Because it keeps skipping around on me.
I'm sorry. I'm just taking my own notes on your notes.
Well, please don't change it, because every time you do that,
I apologize.
All right, I'm trying to find my place.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, Leonard. Mm-hmm. What was I talking about just now? We talked about Rodon.
Yes,
we're done with Rodon. Cole Hamels. Now we're talking about Wilson Contreras. No player has played even 500 or more career games with each of the Cubs and the Cardinals. Contreras is one of the game's more consistent offensive threats behind the plate. He's been an average or better hitter in every season of his career. Over parts of 7 MLB seasons, he carries a .256 average with a .349 on-base percentage, which is, think of it. It's actually really good for a catcher. He's never topped 25 homers, but he has eclipsed the 20-homer mark on 4 separate occasions. With only half a season of action in 2016 and the shortened schedule in 2020, he only once failed to reach 20 home runs over a full year of playing time. So he definitely is good for 20 home runs. That's Wilson Contreras. I know there was a lot of talk in the chat room yesterday about Wilson Contreras. I understand all of it. The Padres are in to win. They could pursue an outfielder. Some of the possibilities among the free agent outfielders are Michael Brantley, A.J. Pollock, Kevin Kiermaier, Andrew McCutchen, and, of course, Michael Conforto is being brought up a lot. I've had a lot of talks with Val about Conforto, never one of them concerning the Padres, but now his name is popping up with interest. I don't know if it's because the Padres are actually going after him or if it's because he actually would be a good fit for the Padres. But Jason Hayward, not fantasy relevant. He did sign a minor league deal that includes an invitation for spring training. Not sure where he signed. The Dodgers. The Dodgers signed him. You have the Red Sox outfielder Masataka Yoshida. Of course, his managers in Japan all loved him. He could hit for distance. He can hit for contact. He can make good adjustments on the fly. He's not a huge guy, but he has the ability and the talent to be a 5-tool player, according to the guys in Japan. Now, one interesting thing about this is that the Red Sox offered and paid more money to this guy than they did offer to Xander Bogaerts in the spring. I can't imagine that. Like, you're taking a guy with absolutely zero experience in the major leagues from Japan, and I'm not saying he's going to be horrible, but he's 29 years old, and he will have a period of time where he has to adjust, and even if he's great right off the bat, it seems like that will fade once the pitchers, once he gets figured out, because you saw it. You see it every time a player comes over here from an international signing. It's all new. The culture's new. The language is new. Everything's new. And you have to give these guys some time to adjust. And to pay this guy so much money and not offer it to one of your fan favorite players is absurd to me. It's crazy.
Trevor Bauer time.
All right. We're going to talk about Trevor Bauer now, so get your kids out of the room. If you don't like adult content, it's up to you. But I'm not going to go into anything crazy. I'm just going to give you an update on Trevor Bauer. So first, I'm going to tell you what's being reported in the newspaper, and then I'm just going to give you my take on it. It's not. I think that I think that people are missing out on both sides of this story, just like people are missing out on both sides of many stories in our current environment with censorship, suppression, and the media has had it in for Trevor Bauer since the day that he came up to the majors with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They made fun of the way he warmed up. They made fun of the way that he pitched. He was a little bit social awkward when he came, and people didn't like that in the media. But instead of him cowering to the media, he decided to fight back. And so this goes back a long way. But there are two sides to every story. And so I would like to just give you an update of what they're reporting with Bauer, because clearly, he was fantasy relevant, and
people want to know if he's going to play this.
And people want to know if he's going to play. So he lost twice in courts on Wednesday when a judge allowed this San Diego woman. First of all, who does this and gets with your rival town girl? He's pitching for the Dodgers. She lives in San Diego, and he's, having a relationship with this girl. That's the first red flag to me, because I know that the Dodgers and the Giants are the big rivalry in California, but I would say that lately, with San Diego improving so much, the Dodgers and the Padres are big divisional rivals now. Anyway, the judge allowed this girl to proceed with her lawsuit, and he dismissed Bauer's defamation lawsuit against one of her attorneys. So Bauer was ordered to pay the legal fees of the former attorney, but that dismissal of that lawsuit does not affect the defamation suits that Bauer has filed against 5 other parties, including the accuser, the Washington Post, these other, the Athletic, and other outlets for defamation. He sued this lawyer for defamation because she went to the Washington Post and told the Washington Post that he brutalized this woman, and Bauer and his attorneys say there was no brutalizing involved, and really the case was dismissed as far as the defamation that this woman did to the Washington Post. They said you got to pay the legal fees for that. When Bauer filed a case to sue the accuser, she turned around and countersued him for battery and assault. And his lawsuit against her is still ongoing. Her lawsuit against him is allowed to continue. They will decide in the courts whether or not there was battery and assault. But there's two sides to this story, and you only are getting one from the media. Anyway, after Bauer sued her for defamation, she countersued. Whether Bauer committed assault or battery will be decided at trial if the case gets there. In the court papers, Bauer does reserve the right to again ask the court to throw out the accuser's suit on procedurally deficient grounds. So that Bauer's attorneys argued that the woman's suit should be thrown out because they had determined the 2 sexual encounters were entirely consensual. They haven't come to a conclusion on that, but I could tell you that it was thrown out in 2 different courts. The restraining order was denied. And going back, all of this stuff doesn't even matter to MLB, to you or to me as fantasy managers, because this is all outside of the purview of MLB. But the fact that MLB has not acted quicker on this appeal by Bauer on a suspension is just unbelievable. The players' agreement says clearly that if a player wants to appeal any suspension, then it goes in front of this impartial panel who will take swift action and decide the case quickly. Now you look at MLB's punishment on this. They wanted him to admit to what he did. They wanted him to admit to wrongdoing, to breaking the law, and to accept and for them to negotiate some kind of punishment, which clearly would have been a lot less than had he said, no, I'm not going to admit that I did anything wrong. He doesn't believe he did anything wrong according to the rules of Major League Baseball. So you got guys like Marcell Ozuna, and not to bring up names, there's plenty of other players that have gone through things like this, domestic violence, and there's been, ever since they came out with this domestic violence laws, the domestic violence rules that they have in Major League Baseball, we've seen the punishments all over the place. And the reason for that is because once the MLB finds you guilty of breaking these rules, they sit down at a table with you and they tell you, okay, if you do this, this, and this, then we'll have your suspension drop to this, this, and this. You can use time served, basically, if you sat out for any period of time while waiting, like Marcell Ozuna did. He sat out a lot of time waiting to get this thing handled. And when it did handle, they gave him 20 game suspension for beating his wife on camera, on police body camera. It's released on the internet. Anybody can see it. And because he says, okay, I'll go to these therapy classes, I'll take anger management, and I'll never do it again, MLB gave him 20 games, time already served. So he didn't even miss one game after that ruling was found. But because Trevor Bauer says, I didn't assault this girl, it's eye-opening if you get all of the information on this case and you get to decide what you think of Trevor Bauer as a person. And I will admit I'm biased because I've always liked his attitude. I've always liked his work ethic, and I've followed him very closely. But put that aside. You look at the text messages between this girl and Bauer, and you can't think anything other than consensual when she's driving from San Diego to spend the night at his house. Recently, Bauer released a video of her laying in his bed after this attack supposedly happened, and she's laughing and she's having a great time. So that's all in court evidence at this point. I'm very disappointed that MLB hasn't acted quicker on this. It's like, why does it take a year for this appeal to take process? I don't know. I'm just flabbergasted at the whole thing. You don't have to like Trevor Bauer. You don't have to like people that have rough sex, but this is a reality people live in. And this girl was like, oh, I loved it so much last time. I'm coming back for more. Can you do this time? We need to go even further because it was the best feeling I ever had in my life. This girl in her text messages was talking to her friends about how she's going to ruin this guy's career. And this is all based on the fact that he didn't want to have a relationship with her other than sexual meetings. That was it. So this, a scorned woman is not some...
Ended at that, a scorned woman.
Anyways, Bauer consistently still denies that he violated either the league policy or the law in the 2 evenings of which his representatives have characterized as unconventional but consensual. We'll see what happens with Trevor Bauer. And that's it. We'll see what happens. We'll keep you updated as much as we get on it. But I guarantee this guy is not going to just lay down quietly. So, like him or not, I feel really strongly about the fact that if you want both sides to a story, you're going to have to actually do some work and some legwork to go look into it rather than just taking what the media says. The media clearly doesn't like certain athletes. That's why Billy Wagner's not in the Hall of Fame. That's why Curt Schilling's not in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame has become nothing more than a popularity contest, which is a sad, sad thing. But if you want to find out both sides to stories, you got to look deeper than just the tweets from the mainstream sports media. That's it. I hope you guys have a great, wonderful day. Lenny will be back on Monday. And say goodbye, Leonard.
Love you all. Thanks, everybody.